The slap echoed through the marble lobby like a gunshot. Ethan Brooks stood perfectly still, his cheek burning, while 30 witnesses held their breath. The operations manager's hand was still raised, her face twisted with contempt as she stared down at the man in the faded jacket who had dared ask for basic respect. "That," she hissed, "is what happens when people like you forget their place." Ethan reached slowly into his pocket, not for his wallet, not for identification, for his phone. One call. That's all it would take to reveal the truth. He owned everything she was about to lose. If you want to see what happens next, stay until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The taxi pulled away from the resort's circular drive, leaving Ethan Brooks standing alone with a single weathered duffel bag at his feet. The afternoon sun glinted off floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the grand oceanic resort into a fortress of light and glass. Palm trees swayed in the salt-tinged breeze. Somewhere beyond the manicured gardens, waves whispered against private beaches where the wealthy came to forget the world existed. Ethan didn't belong to that world, at least not in the way anyone looking at him would think. He was 42, lean and quietly exhausted in the way single fathers often are. His jeans had been washed so many times the denim had gone soft at the knees. His jacket, navy blue, practical, purchased 3 years ago, bore the kind of wear that comes from being the only decent coat a man owns. His dark hair needed cutting. His face needed sleep. His shoes were clean but scuffed, the leather creased from miles of walking through a life that hadn't been gentle. He looked, in other words, exactly like someone who couldn't afford to be here. That was the point. Ethan picked up his bag and walked toward the entrance. The automatic doors whispered open. Cool air washed over him, carrying the scent of expensive lilies and something citrus. The lobby stretched before him like a cathedral, vaulted ceilings, cream marble floors polished to a mirror shine, curving staircases that swept upward with the grace of something designed to intimidate. A chandelier the size of a small car hung overhead, each crystal catching light and scattering it like diamonds. Behind the reception desk, 3 staff members in crisp uniforms moved with practiced efficiency. A couple in designer athleisure stood at the counter, laughing about something as a young clerk processed their check-in with bright professionalism. Ethan approached the desk and set his bag down. The laughter stopped. All 3 staff members glanced his way. Their expressions shifted in unison, not dramatically, but enough. A tightening around the eyes, a flatness in the smile, the universal micro-expression of people deciding someone isn't worth their best effort. The clerk helping the couple didn't acknowledge Ethan. The woman at the far end suddenly found something fascinating on her computer screen. The third, a young man with gelled hair and a name tag that read Marcus, looked directly at Ethan, then looked away. Ethan waited. The couple finished their transaction, accepted their key cards with another round of pleasantries, and strolled toward the elevators. One of them glanced back at Ethan, just a flicker of curiosity, before disappearing around the corner. Marcus finally approached. His smile was thin, his voice polite in the way that barely qualifies. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to check in," Ethan said quietly. "Reservation under Brooks." Marcus tapped at his keyboard without urgency. His eyes skimmed the screen. "Brooks. First name?" "Ethan." More tapping. A pause. Marcus frowned slightly, scrolling. "I'm not seeing it." "It should be there. Confirmed last week." Marcus clicked around a bit more, his movement slow, unbothered. "System's a little backed up. Give me a minute." Ethan nodded. He glanced around the lobby. A family with matching luggage sets swept past, trailing a porter pushing a cart stacked with suitcases. Near the concierge desk, a man in a tailored suit spoke rapid French into his phone. Everything gleamed. Everything moved with the oiled precision of a place designed to make the right people feel exceptional. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Marcus was still clicking. Or pretending to. It was hard to tell. "I can wait over there if it's easier," Ethan offered. No, just hold on." Marcus squinted at the screen. He leaned over to the woman beside him. "Hey, Rachel, you seen any Brooks reservations in the system?" Rachel barely looked up. "Did you refresh?" "Yeah." "Check the alternative spelling." Marcus sighed, typed again. Nope. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. I have the confirmation email, if that helps. We don't really go by emails, Marcus said absently. We go by what's in the system. Right. But if the system's wrong, the system's not usually wrong. There it was, the edge. Not quite rude, just dismissive enough to sting. Ethan pulled out his phone, opened his email, and turned the screen toward Marcus. The confirmation was clear. Grand Oceanic Resort, Deluxe Ocean View Suite. Check-in, March 14th. Reservation number, GOC 47823. Marcus glanced at it. Huh. Okay. Let me check with my manager. He walked away without another word. Ethan stood there, alone at the counter. Behind him, the lobby filled and emptied in waves. A bellhop glided past with a luggage cart. A woman in heels click-clacked toward the spa entrance. No one looked at him, or rather, they looked, decided he wasn't worth noticing, and kept moving. This was the test. Ethan had built this place from the ground up. 7 years ago, the Grand Oceanic had been a half-finished disaster, a developer's abandoned dream rotting on a coastline nobody wanted. Ethan had seen past the rust and broken windows. He'd seen what it could become. He'd poured everything he had into it, money, time, sleep, pieces of himself he'd never get back. He'd hired architects and contractors. He'd argued with city planners and banks. He'd missed his son's 4th birthday because he was negotiating a loan that would either save the project or bury him. And it had worked. The Grand Oceanic had become one of the most sought-after resorts on the eastern seaboard. 5 stars, awards, features in travel magazines. People flew in from across the world to stay here. But Ethan had started to hear things. Complaints that didn't make it into official channels. Whispers from former guests who'd felt dismissed, overlooked, judged. Reviews that mentioned cold service or clear favoritism buried beneath glowing praise from guests who arrived in the right cars, wore the right brands, spoke with the right accents. So he'd come here, unannounced, dressed down, using a reservation made under his real name, one that wouldn't trigger recognition among staff trained to fawn over VIPs and influencers. He wanted to see how his resort treated people who looked like they didn't matter. Now he was getting his answer. Marcus returned, trailed by an older woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag read Diane, guest services supervisor. She had the look of someone who'd worked in hospitality long enough to perfect the art of smiling without warmth. "Mr. Brooks?" she said, her tone pleasant but distant. "I understand there's some confusion about your reservation." "No confusion on my end," Ethan said calmly. "I have a confirmed booking." "Yes, Marcus showed me the email. Unfortunately, we're not finding it in our system, which does create a bit of a complication." "What kind of complication?" "Well, without a system record, we can't guarantee room availability, especially during peak season." She tilted her head sympathetically. "We're fully booked." "Then how did I get a confirmation?" "That's what we're trying to determine." Diane's smile thinned. "Sometimes third-party booking sites create issues." "I booked directly through your website." Even so." She tapped a manicured nail on the counter. "What I can do is put you on a wait list. If something opens up, we'll contact you." Ethan studied her. "How long's the wait list?" "Hard to say. Could be a few hours. Could be a few days." "I was told my room would be ready at 3. It's 3:15. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Brooks, but without a valid reservation in our system, the reservation is valid. You're choosing not to honor it." The words hung in the air. Diane's smile vanished. "Sir, I'm trying to help you." "Are you?" Her eyes went cold. "I'm offering you options. You're welcome to wait in the lounge while we sort this out, or you're welcome to seek accommodations elsewhere." Ethan didn't move. "I'd like to speak to your manager." "I am the manager on duty." "Then I'd like to speak to someone above you." Diane's lips pressed into a line. She glanced at Marcus, then back at Ethan. Around them, the lobby continued its rhythm, guests coming and going, oblivious to the quiet standoff unfolding at the desk. "Fine," Diane said finally. "I'll page the operations manager, but I should warn you, Ms. Whitman is very busy, and she's not going to tell you anything different than what I've already explained. I'll wait." Diane walked away, heels sharp against marble. Ethan stepped aside, letting another guest approach the counter. This one, a man in expensive loafers and a polo shirt with a designer logo, was greeted immediately by Rachel, her smile wide and genuine. "Welcome back, Mr. Hendricks. So wonderful to see you again. Let me get you checked in right away." "Thanks, Rachel. Good to be back. We have you in your usual suite. Ocean view, king bed, all set. Can I get someone to help with your bags?" "That'd be great." The interaction took 90 seconds. Mr. Hendricks received his keys, a complimentary drink voucher, and directions to the VIP lounge. He thanked Rachel warmly and strode off, trailing a porter with his luggage. Ethan watched it all. 15 minutes later, a woman in a charcoal blazer and pencil skirt appeared from a hallway marked "Staff Only." She moved with the brisk confidence of someone used to command. Her blonde hair was styled in a sleek bob. Her makeup was immaculate. Her expression was neutral, professionally blank in the way that said she'd already made up her mind before arriving. This was Claire Whitman, operations manager. Ethan knew her name from quarterly reports. She'd been with the resort for 3 years, praised for efficiency and revenue growth. He'd never met her in person. She approached Ethan without introducing herself. "You're the gentleman with the booking issue?" "Ethan Brooks, and it's not an issue on my end." Claire's gaze swept over him, jacket, jeans, bag, in a single assessing glance. "Mr. Brooks, I've reviewed your situation with my team. Unfortunately, we don't have a reservation under your name in our active system. I have a confirmation email. Email confirmations can be generated by third-party scams, Mr. Brooks. We see it occasionally. I booked through your official website. Do you have a transaction record, a credit card charge?" Ethan hesitated. The reservation had been made through a secondary account he used for personal matters, kept separate from his business holdings. He hadn't thought to pull up the bank records before arriving. Claire took his silence as answer. "I didn't think so." "I can pull it up now if you give me a minute." "That's fine. While you do that, I'm going to recommend you contact whatever service you used to book and resolve the issue with them. In the meantime, we can't accommodate walk-ins without confirmed reservations." "I'm not a walk-in. I'm a guest with a confirmed booking. Not according to our records." "Then your records are wrong." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Brooks, I understand you're frustrated, but I need you to understand something as well. This is a luxury resort. We operate on a very specific standard. We can't simply hand out rooms to anyone who shows up claiming they have a reservation." "I'm not claiming, I'm stating. And I'm stating that without proper documentation in our system, there's nothing I can do for you." She crossed her arms. "Now, if you'd like to book a room for a future date, pending availability, we'd be happy to assist. But today, right now, we're fully booked." Ethan's voice stayed level. "An hour ago, a guest walked in and was checked into a suite in under 2 minutes. That guest had a confirmed reservation. So do I." "Not in our system." "Which means your system failed, not me." Claire's smile was ice. "Our system is state-of-the-art, Mr. Brooks. It doesn't fail." "Everything fails sometimes." "Not here." The lobby had grown quieter. Other guests were starting to notice. A couple near the concierge desk glanced over, whispering. A bellhop slowed his cart, watching. Ethan took a slow breath. "All I'm asking is that you honor the reservation I made. That's it. I'm not asking for an upgrade. I'm not asking for freebies, just the room I paid for." "And all I'm asking," Claire said, her voice sharpening, "is that you provide valid proof of that reservation, which you haven't." "I showed you the email." "Emails aren't proof. They're literally confirmation." "Not without corresponding system records." Ethan stared at her. "So no matter what I show you, you've already decided I don't belong here." Claire's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "I've decided that we follow procedure. If that's uncomfortable for you, perhaps this isn't the right establishment for your needs." There it was, coded, careful, but clear. "You don't belong here." Ethan felt the heat rise in his chest, but he kept his voice quiet. "I'd like to escalate this to the general manager." "The general manager isn't on site." "Then the owner." Claire actually laughed, a short, sharp sound. "The owner doesn't involve himself in day-to-day guest disputes." "How do you know?" Because I've worked here for 3 years, and he's never once set foot in this building. Ethan said nothing. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. Let me be very clear, Mr. Brooks. I don't know what you thought was going to happen here. Maybe you saw some pictures online and thought you'd try your luck. Maybe someone told you this place was worth seeing. But this resort caters to a very specific clientele. People who understand expectations. People who... She glanced at his jacket. Fit. Fit. Yes. And I don't. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Her smile returned, thin and cold. If you'd like, I can recommend several hotels nearby that might be more in line with your budget. The words landed like a slap. Around them, the lobby had gone still. Guests pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. Staff members hovered near their stations, uncertain whether to intervene or stay invisible. Ethan looked at Claire Whitman, this woman who ran his resort, who represented his brand, who had just told a paying guest he didn't belong, and felt something crack open inside him. Not anger, not yet, sadness, because this was exactly what he'd feared. This was why he'd come. Ms. Whitman, he said quietly, I need you to hear me very clearly. I have a confirmed reservation. I've been polite. I've been patient. I've followed every procedure you've asked for. And despite all of that, you've treated me like I'm trying to scam my way into a room I can't afford. He paused. Do you treat all your guests this way? Or just the ones who don't look rich enough? Claire's face flushed. How dare you? I'm asking a genuine question. You're being insulting. I'm being honest. You're being difficult. Her voice rose. I've tried to help you. I've been patient. But you keep pushing, keep making accusations, keep wasting my time and my staff's time when we have actual guests to attend to. I am an actual guest. No, Claire snapped. You're someone who showed up with a fake reservation and an attitude, and I'm done entertaining this. It's not fake. Then prove it. I did. Not to my satisfaction. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. What would satisfy you? What do I need to do to be treated with basic respect in this building? Claire stepped forward, her voice dropping to a hiss meant only for him. You want respect? Then maybe try acting like you deserve it. Maybe try looking like you belong somewhere like this. Maybe try... She stopped, because Ethan had pulled out his phone. Not frantically, not dramatically, just calmly, deliberately. He unlocked it, opened his contacts, scrolled. Claire watched, her expression shifting from anger to confusion. What are you doing? Ethan didn't answer. He tapped a name, held the phone to his ear. It rang once, twice. Claire crossed her arms, her tone mocking. Who are you calling? Your lawyer? The call connected. A voice answered, clipped, professional, instantly recognizable to anyone who'd worked at the resort long enough. This is Jonathan Pierce. Ethan's voice was calm, tired, but steady. Jonathan, it's Ethan Brooks. I need you at the Grand Oceanic lobby, now. There was a pause. Then, Sir, you're here? Yes. Is everything all right? No. Another pause. Longer this time. When Jonathan spoke again, his tone had shifted, sharper, urgent. I'll be there in 3 minutes. The line went dead. Ethan lowered his phone. Claire stared at him, her confidence fracturing. Who did you just call? Ethan met her eyes, and for the first time since he'd walked through those doors, he let her see the truth. The general manager, he said quietly, the one you said wasn't on site. The blood drained from Claire's face. Behind her, Marcus had gone pale. Diane stood frozen near the desk. Rachel's hands hovered over her keyboard, forgotten. The lobby, still full of guests, still gleaming with wealth and polish, felt suddenly fragile. Claire opened her mouth, closed it. I don't... You have 3 minutes, Ethan said, his voice soft but immovable, to decide what you're going to say when he gets here. She stared at him, at his worn jacket, his scuffed shoes, his tired face, at the man she'd dismissed as nobody, and realized, too late, that she'd made a terrible mistake. The automatic doors opened. Footsteps echoed across marble. Jonathan Pierce appeared, tall and sharp in a dark suit, his face tight with concern. He scanned the lobby, found Ethan, and crossed the space in long strides. "Mr. Brooks," he said, slightly breathless, "I apologize. I didn't know you were arriving today." Ethan didn't take his eyes off Claire. That was intentional. Jonathan followed his gaze, saw Claire standing there, frozen, saw the staff behind the desk, pale and silent, saw the guests watching with barely concealed fascination. His expression hardened. "What happened?" Claire found her voice. "There was a misunderstanding about a reservation." "A misunderstanding," Ethan repeated softly. "Yes. The system was fine, Ms. Whitman. You just didn't believe I deserved to use it." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Is that true?" Claire stammered. "No, I mean, there was no record." "Because you didn't look." Ethan's voice was quiet, but it carried. "You looked at me and decided I didn't belong. And instead of doing your job, you tried to make me leave." "That's not—" "You told me to find a hotel that fit my budget." Silence. Jonathan turned to Claire slowly. "You said that?" She said nothing. "Ms. Whitman, did you say that to a guest?" "I was trying to answer the question," Claire's voice cracked. I thought—" "Oh, you thought what?" She looked at Ethan, at his clothes, at everything she'd used to judge him, and then she looked at Jonathan's face, and knew. "Oh my God," she whispered. Ethan watched her, watched the realization crash over her like a wave. 3 years, he said quietly. "You've worked here for 3 years. You've built a career on this property. And you never once asked yourself how we treat people when they're not wearing designer labels." Claire's hands trembled. "Mr. Brooks, I didn't know." "No," Ethan said. "You didn't care." Jonathan stepped forward, his voice cold. "Ms. Whitman, you're suspended effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. HR will contact you regarding termination proceedings." Claire's face went white. "Please." "There's nothing to discuss." "I made a mistake. You made a choice," Ethan said, "and that choice told me everything I needed to know about how you run my resort." The words hung in the air. My resort. Claire swayed slightly. Somewhere behind the desk, someone gasped. Jonathan turned to the staff. "Marcus, Rachel, Diane, you're all suspended pending review. Someone from HR will contact you within 24 hours. Diane's voice shook. "But we didn't—" "You stood by and watched," Ethan said quietly. "That's enough." The lobby was silent except for the soft rush of the fountain and the distant murmur of the ocean. Ethan looked at Claire one last time. "You asked what I needed to do to deserve respect. The answer was nothing. I already deserved it. I just needed you to care enough to see it." Then he turned to Jonathan. "I'd like to check into my room now." "Of course, Mr. Brooks. Right away." Jonathan moved to the desk, typed rapidly, and produced a key card. He handed it to Ethan with something like reverence. "Penthouse suite, ocean view. Everything's ready for you, sir." Ethan took the key, picked up his bag, and without another word he walked toward the elevators. Behind him, Claire stood frozen, her career crumbling. The doors closed. And Ethan Brooks, quiet, unremarkable, invisible to those who'd never learned to see, finally disappeared from view. The elevator climbed in silence, each floor marked by a soft chime that seemed too delicate for the weight of what had just happened. Ethan stood with his bag at his feet, watching the numbers ascend on the digital display. His reflection stared back at him from the polished brass doors. A tired man in a worn jacket who just dismantled someone's career with 6 words. My resort. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just the hollow ache of confirmation that his worst suspicions had been true. The elevator opened onto the top floor, revealing a hallway decorated in muted blues and soft grays, thick carpet muffling his footsteps. His suite was at the end, double doors with brushed nickel handles. He swiped his keycard and stepped inside. The space was exactly as beautiful as he designed it to be. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed an endless view of the Atlantic, waves rolling in steady rhythm toward the shore. The furniture was elegant without being ostentatious. A sectional sofa in cream linen, a dining table that could seat 6, a kitchen appointed with high-end appliances that most guests would never use. Everything spoke of quiet luxury, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. Ethan set his bag on the luggage rack and walked to the windows. The sun was lower now, painting the water in shades of amber and rose. A sailboat drifted on the horizon, white against blue. It was the kind of view people paid thousands of dollars to wake up to. He'd built this, created it from nothing. And somewhere in the process of making it perfect, he'd lost control of what it meant. His phone buzzed. Jonathan's name appeared on the screen. Ethan answered. Yes? Mr. Brooks. Jonathan's voice was tight with controlled urgency. I've initiated the suspension protocols you witnessed. Security escorted Miss Whitman from the building. The front desk staff have been sent home pending investigation. I've called in backup personnel to cover the evening shift. Good. Sir, I need to ask, how long have you been planning this? Ethan leaned against the window frame. 2 weeks, since I got the 3rd complaint in a month about discriminatory treatment. I never saw those complaints. Because they didn't come through official channels. People posted them on travel forums, Reddit threads, places where they felt safe being honest. Ethan's voice was quiet. They said our staff treated them differently based on appearance, class markers, accents. I wanted to see it myself. Jonathan was silent for a moment. And you did? Yes. What Claire said to you, that's unacceptable, inexcusable. I take full responsibility for not catching this sooner. You're not responsible for her choices, Jonathan, but you are responsible for the culture that let her think those choices were acceptable. Ethan turned from the window. How many other staff members treat guests that way when no one's watching? I don't know. That's the problem. Neither do I, and I own the place. Another pause. What do you want me to do? Tomorrow morning, I want a full staff meeting, everyone. Front desk, housekeeping, concierge, bellhops, restaurant staff, everyone who interacts with guests, mandatory attendance. Done. What else? Pull the security footage from the lobby for the past month. I want to review every check-in interaction. Look for patterns. That's hundreds of hours of footage. Then hire someone to help you review it. I want to know if this is systemic or isolated. Understood. Jonathan hesitated. Sir, there's something else. Word is already spreading through the staff. People are asking questions. Some are worried they're next. Good. They should be worried. If they've been treating guests like Claire did, they should be very worried. And if they haven't, then they have nothing to fear. Ethan moved to the kitchen, opened a bottle of water from the refrigerator. Jonathan, I'm not here to destroy this place. I'm here to fix it. But I can't fix it if people think their jobs are safe, regardless of how they behave. I understand. Do you? Because I need to know you're with me on this. If you think I'm overreacting, if you think Claire just made one bad call and doesn't deserve to lose everything, tell me now. Jonathan's response was immediate. She struck you. Ethan went still. What? In the footage I reviewed from today, after you made the phone call, while you were waiting for me to arrive, she struck you, a guest, in front of witnesses. The memory surfaced, Claire stepping closer, her voice dropping to that hissing whisper, her hand moving faster than his exhausted mind could track. He'd felt the impact, heard the gasp from nearby guests, but in the chaos that followed, the moment had blurred. I didn't include that in my report yet, Jonathan continued, his voice hard. I wanted to speak with you first, but Mr. Brooks, that's assault. That's criminal. She didn't just provide bad service, she committed a crime on our property. Ethan closed his eyes. Were there witnesses? At least a dozen, and clear camera footage. Does she know you have it? Not yet. Ethan set down the water bottle. His hand was shaking slightly. Don't tell her. Not yet. I need to think about how to handle this. Sir, with respect, there's nothing to think about. She assaulted you. We call the police, press charges, and let the legal system handle it. And destroy her life completely. She made that choice when she hit you. I know. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. I know she did. But Jonathan, I need you to understand something. I came here to expose a problem and fix it, not to annihilate someone. Even someone who hit you? Especially someone who hit you. Because if I go after her with everything I have, criminal charges, public humiliation, legal destruction, what does that make me? Just another powerful person using their position to crush someone weaker. She's not weaker. She's wrong. Both things can be true. Ethan rubbed his face. Give me until tomorrow. Let me think. Then we'll decide how to proceed. Jonathan didn't answer immediately. When he did, his tone was careful. Mr. Brooks, I respect your compassion. I do. But I'm worried you're letting it override your judgment. This woman humiliated you, discriminated against you, and physically assaulted you. The fact that you turned out to be the owner doesn't erase what she did. It makes it worse. She revealed exactly who she is when she thinks no one important is watching. I know. Then why protect her? I'm not protecting her. I'm protecting who I want to be when this is over. Ethan moved back to the window. The sun had dipped lower, the sky now streaked with purple. My son is arriving tomorrow. He's 7 years old. And the whole reason I took this trip alone first was so I could make sure this place was somewhere I'd feel good about bringing him. Somewhere that treated people with dignity regardless of who they were. And it's not. No, it's not. And I have to fix that. But I also have to look my son in the eye and know I fixed it the right way. Jonathan sighed. Tomorrow morning, staff meeting. I'll have everything ready. Thank you. And Mr. Brooks? For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Sorry you had to experience that. Sorry we failed you. You didn't fail me, the system did. Now we fix the system. The call ended. Ethan stood at the window as twilight deepened over the water. Somewhere below, in staff areas he'd never seen, people were learning what had happened. Some would be scared, some would be angry. Some would wonder if they were next. He hoped they were asking themselves the right questions. His phone buzzed again. This time a text from his sister Lauren. Did you make it to the resort okay? How's the room? Ethan smiled faintly and typed back. Room's perfect. Getting settled. Tell Jamie I'll call him before bed. He's already counting down the hours until he sees you tomorrow. Be prepared for approximately 1 million questions about the beach. I'm ready. Are you okay? You sound tired, even in text. Ethan hesitated. Lauren knew him too well, had been there through the divorce, through the years of building the business while raising Jamie alone, through every moment when Ethan had wanted to quit but couldn't because too many people depended on him. Long day. I'll be fine. That's what you always say because it's always true. Liar. But I love you anyway. Get some rest. He set the phone down and moved through the suite, unpacking his few belongings. A change of clothes, toiletries, a worn paperback he'd been reading for 3 months and still hadn't finished, and at the bottom of his bag, wrapped in a protective sleeve, a drawing Jamie had made last week. Ethan pulled it out carefully. Crayon on construction paper, a stick figure man and a smaller stick figure boy standing on a beach, the sun a bright yellow circle overhead. In Jamie's careful 7-year-old handwriting, me and Dad at the ocean. Ocean. He'd meant ocean. Ethan set the drawing on the nightstand where he'd see it first thing in the morning. Tomorrow, Jamie would be here. They'd walk on that beach together, build sandcastles, hunt for shells, have the kind of simple, perfect day that Ethan used to dream about when he was working 80-hour weeks and seeing his son only on weekends. But first, Ethan had to make sure this place was worthy of that moment. He ordered room service, something simple, a sandwich and soup, and ate mechanically while reviewing emails on his laptop. Most were routine business matters. A few were from his legal team regarding an unrelated property acquisition. Nothing urgent. Nothing that couldn't wait. At 9 o'clock, his phone rang, an unknown local number. Ethan answered cautiously. Hello? Mr. Brooks? A woman's voice shaking. This is Claire Whitman. Please don't hang up. Ethan's jaw tightened. How did you get my personal number? I still have access to some staff databases. I know I shouldn't have looked, but Her voice broke. Please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes. You have nothing to say that I want to hear. I know that. But please, I'm begging you. Let me apologize. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Ms. Whitman. I was there. I saw exactly who you are. I made a terrible mistake. You made a choice, multiple choices, each one worse than the last. Silence. Then quietly, you're right. You're absolutely right. I did. And I can't take it back. But Mr. Brooks, please, I have a daughter. She's 12. I'm a single mother. I can't lose this job. I can't lose my career. I'll do anything. Ethan closed his eyes. You should have thought about your daughter before you struck a guest in my lobby. Claire gasped. You know about that? There were cameras and witnesses, dozens of them. Oh God, the sound of crying, muffled as if she'd covered the phone. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. I was angry. You kept pushing and you just what? Decided violence was an appropriate response to someone asking for basic respect? No, I don't know what I was thinking. I've never done anything like that before. I swear to you, I've never… Ms. Whitman, I'm going to stop you right there. You called my personal number without permission. You're trying to manipulate me by mentioning your daughter. You're claiming this was out of character when everything about our interaction suggests this is exactly your character. Ethan's voice was cold. You don't get to ask me for mercy. You don't get to make this about your hardship. You created this situation. You live with it. Please don't press charges. Please, I'll resign quietly. I'll sign anything you want. I'll never work in hospitality again. Just please don't make this criminal. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Why shouldn't I? Because, Claire struggled for words. Because I made a mistake. A horrible, unforgivable mistake. But I'm not a bad person. I'm not violent. I'm stressed and overwhelmed, and I took it out on you, and that was wrong, but it doesn't mean I deserve to have my entire life destroyed. You took it out on me because you thought I was nobody, someone you could dismiss and humiliate without consequences. You didn't know I owned the building. You didn't know I could fight back. That's not stress, Ms. Whitman. That's who you chose to be when you thought no one was watching. I know. Her voice was a whisper. I know, and I hate myself for it. I hate that I'm that person. I hate that I treated you that way. But Mr. Brooks, I swear to you, I swear on my daughter's life, I will never, ever treat another human being like that again. This has broken me. Losing my job, facing what I did, it's broken me. Please don't break me further. Ethan stood and walked to the window. Outside, the ocean was black under a scattered field of stars. Somewhere out there, a boat's lights bobbed on invisible waves. Miss Whitman, you're asking me to show you a compassion you never showed me. Do you understand that? Yes. You're asking me to give you a second chance you didn't think I deserved. Yes. Why would I do that? Claire was crying openly now. Because maybe you're a better person than I am. Maybe you can be who I should have been. The words hung between them. Ethan thought about Jamie's drawing, about the kind of father he wanted to be, about the kind of man who could teach his son that power is nothing without principle. I'm not deciding anything tonight, he said finally. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with staff and beginning a full investigation into how this resort treats its guests. If I find evidence that your behavior was part of a larger pattern of discrimination, there will be legal consequences. If I find that you specifically encouraged or enabled that culture, those consequences will be severe. And if you don't? I don't know yet. But Ms. Whitman, understand this. Your career at this resort is over. That's not negotiable. Whether I pursue criminal charges is something I'm still considering. I suggest you spend tonight thinking about what you'd do differently if you could go back to this afternoon. Not for me. For yourself. Mr. Brooks, that's all I'm willing to say. Don't call this number again. He ended the call. For a long time, Ethan stood in the dark suite, listening to the distant sound of waves against sand. His cheeks still ached faintly where she'd struck him. The humiliation still burned, the anger still simmered. But beneath it all was something else. Sadness. Because Claire Whitman probably wasn't lying when she said she had a daughter. Probably wasn't lying when she said she'd never done this before. People didn't usually become operations managers at luxury resorts by hitting guests. which meant something in the culture of this place, something in the unspoken rules and invisible hierarchies, had convinced her that treating certain people as less than human was acceptable. Expected, even. And that was on him. He'd built this resort, hired the staff, set the standards, or failed to set them clearly enough. Somewhere along the way, while he was focused on revenue and occupancy rates and five-star reviews, he'd allowed his property to become a place where people were judged by their clothes instead of their humanity. That stopped now. Ethan showered, changed into comfortable clothes, and called Jamie. His son answered on the first ring, breathless with excitement. "Dad, are you at the beach?" "I am, buddy. Is it awesome?" "It's pretty awesome. I can see the ocean from my room." "Can you see sharks?" "No sharks yet, but I'll keep looking." Jamie giggled. "Aunt Lauren says we're leaving really early tomorrow, like before breakfast." "That's right. You'll be here by lunchtime." "And then we can go swimming?" "If you want." I want to build a sandcastle taller than you." Ethan smiled. "That's going to be a very tall sandcastle." "I know. It's going to be the biggest one ever." Jamie paused. "Dad, are you okay? You sound different." Ethan's throat tightened. 7 years old, and his son could already hear the weight in his voice. "I'm fine, Jamie. Just tired. It was a long day." "Did something bad happen?" "No." "Well, yes, but I'm handling it." "Do you need help? I'm really good at helping." "I know you are, and you help me just by being you." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. "I love you, kiddo." "I love you too, Dad. More than all the sharks in the ocean. Even the big ones. Even the really, really, really big ones." They talked for another 10 minutes, about Jamie's day at school, about the new book Lauren was reading to him, about whether dolphins were cooler than whales. Normal things, simple things. The kind of conversation that reminded Ethan why he did any of this. When Jamie finally yawned and Lauren gently took the phone to say goodnight, Ethan felt steadier than he had all day. "You sure you're okay?" Lauren asked quietly. "I will be." "That's not the same thing." "I know." She sighed. "Whatever happened today, Ethan, don't carry it alone. You have people who care about you. Let us help." "I will, I promise. Right now I just need sleep." "Okay, we'll see you tomorrow." "And Ethan, Jamie's not the only one who loves you more than all the sharks." "I know. Love you too." The call ended. Ethan set his phone on the nightstand beside Jamie's drawing and lay back on the bed. The room was silent except for the faint sound of the ocean through the glass. Outside, the stars were bright and indifferent. The world kept turning regardless of what had happened in one lobby, to one man, on one otherwise ordinary afternoon. But it mattered. It had to matter. Because if it didn't, if people could be judged, dismissed, and humiliated based on nothing more than appearance and assumption, and if that was just the way things were, then what was the point of building anything at all? Ethan closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he would face his staff. Tomorrow, he would begin the difficult work of changing a culture he'd inadvertently allowed to grow toxic. Tomorrow, he would decide what justice looked like for Claire Whitman and everyone else who'd failed the basic test of human decency. Tomorrow, his son would arrive, and they would walk on the beach together, and for those few hours, Ethan would get to be just a dad. But tonight, he was a man lying alone in a beautiful room, aching from a slap that had revealed far more than physical force. It had revealed the truth. And the truth, as always, demanded a reckoning. Somewhere below, in staff quarters and apartments scattered across the town, people were having their own reckonings. Marcus, the front desk clerk, sat at his kitchen table and wondered if he should have spoken up when Claire dismissed that tired-looking man in the worn jacket. Rachel replayed the moment in her mind when she'd turned away, pretending to be busy, choosing complicity over courage. Diane stared at her phone, debating whether to call her union rep or start updating her resume. And Claire Whitman sat in her daughter's bedroom, watching the girl sleep, and wondered how she'd become the kind of person who could strike another human being and feel, even for a second, like it was justified. They were all asking questions they should have asked long ago. Ethan didn't know any of this, but he would have recognized the weight of it. The uncomfortable, necessary work of looking in the mirror and seeing not the person you thought you were, but the person your actions revealed. He'd done that work himself years ago, when his marriage fell apart, and he'd had to confront the fact that building a business empire meant nothing if you lost your family in the process. He'd learned, painfully, that success without integrity was just well-decorated failure. Now his resort was learning the same lesson. Ethan's breathing slowed. His body, exhausted from travel and confrontation, finally began to relax. The last thought he had before sleep claimed him was of Jamie's drawing, two stick figures on a beach, holding hands beneath a crayon sun. That's what mattered, not the resort, not the revenue, not the 5-star reviews or the awards or the recognition, just a father and son, together, in a place that treated everyone with the dignity they deserved. Everything else was details. And tomorrow, Ethan would handle the details. Tonight, he slept. Outside his window, the Atlantic rolled on in its ancient rhythm, indifferent to human drama, constant as heartbeat. Waves broke against the shore in steady percussion, each one erasing the footprints of the day, making the sand smooth and new, ready for whatever came next. Inside the resort, night shift staff moved through carpeted hallways, delivering room service, restocking minibars, turning down beds. Most didn't know yet what had happened in the lobby. A few had heard whispers, something about the operations manager being fired, something about the owner showing up unannounced. By morning, everyone would know. And by morning, everything would change. But for now, the Grand Oceanic Resort gleamed in the darkness, beautiful and flawed, a monument to ambition that had forgotten its purpose. Ethan Brooks slept in the penthouse suite, one hand curled near his face where Claire's slap had landed, the other stretched toward the nightstand where his son's drawing promised tomorrow would be different. Better. Because he would make it so. Not through vengeance, not through destruction, through the harder, slower work of building something that deserved the name he'd given it. A place of dignity, a place of respect, a place where everyone, regardless of what they wore or how they spoke or how much money they carried, could walk through those doors and know they mattered. That was the dream. Tomorrow, he would begin making it real. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through the curtains, turning the ocean silver gray in the pre-dawn hours. Ethan woke before his alarm, his body still operating on the tension of yesterday. For a moment, he lay still, listening to the waves, letting himself exist in the quiet space between sleep and action. Then he saw Jamie's drawing on the nightstand, and the day's purpose crystallized. He showered, dressed in clothes that were professional but not expensive, dark slacks, a button-down shirt, no tie. He wanted to look like someone who belonged in a leadership position without the armor of obvious wealth. Then he made coffee from the sweets machine and stood at the window, watching the sky shift from gray to pale blue as the sun climbed somewhere beyond the horizon. His phone showed a text from Jonathan, sent 20 minutes ago. Staff meeting set for 8 a.m. in the main conference room. 127 employees confirmed attendance. Security footage compilation ready for your review. I'll meet you in the lobby at 7:30. Ethan checked the time. 6:45. He had time. He pulled up his laptop and began reviewing the security footage Jonathan had flagged. The timestamp spanned the past month, each clip showing a different check-in interaction. Jonathan had organized them into categories, and the pattern was sickeningly clear. Guests who arrived in luxury vehicles, wearing designer clothes, carrying premium luggage. They received immediate attention, warm smiles, offers of champagne, personal escorts to their rooms. The staff laughed at their jokes, remembered their preferences, treated them like beloved friends returning home. Guests who arrived in taxis or ride shares, wearing ordinary clothes, carrying standard luggage. They waited, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 20. The smiles were thinner. The service was technically correct but emotionally cold. No one offered champagne. No one asked about their journey. They were processed like transactions instead of welcomed like people. And then there were the guests who looked like Ethan had looked yesterday. The ones in worn jeans and scuffed shoes carrying backpacks or duffel bags, whose reservations were suddenly difficult to find, whose credit cards were scrutinized with extra care, who were subtly but unmistakably made to feel they'd wandered into the wrong place. One clip showed an older black woman in a simple dress waiting at the desk for nearly 30 minutes while staff helped other guests who'd arrived after her. When she finally asked how much longer, the clerk's tone was barely polite. "We're doing our best, ma'am. These things take time." Another showed a young man with a heavy accent being asked repeatedly to confirm his reservation, his payment method, his identification, questions that were never asked of the well-dressed couple processed immediately before him. A third showed a family, parents and two small children, being told their reserved connecting rooms weren't available, then watching as a single guest with expensive luggage was offered an upgrade to a suite without even asking. Ethan watched clip after clip, his coffee going cold in his hand, his jaw tightening with each new example of casual cruelty dressed up as policy. This wasn't about Claire Whitman. This was systemic. He closed the laptop and finished getting ready. At 7:25, he left his suite and took the elevator down to the lobby. The morning shift was already in full swing, staff moving efficiently through their routines, guests heading to breakfast or early spa appointments, everything gleaming and perfect on the surface. Jonathan was waiting near the concierge desk, holding a tablet and looking like he hadn't slept. His suit was impeccable as always, but his eyes were shadowed with exhaustion and something else. Shame, maybe, or determination. Mr. Brooks. He approached quickly. Good morning, everything's ready. How are the staff handling this? Nervous, confused? Some are angry, claiming they've done nothing wrong. Others are scared they're going to lose their jobs. Jonathan's voice was low. Word spread fast about what happened to Claire. People are asking questions I can't answer yet. Good. They should be asking questions. Ethan glanced around the lobby. Where are the employees who were suspended yesterday? Marcus, Rachel, and Diane are on administrative leave. They've been informed they're not to contact other staff or return to the property until the investigation is complete. And Claire? Jonathan hesitated. She's called my office 4 times since yesterday. Left voicemails, sent emails. She wants to meet with you. No. That's what I told her. But sir, there's something you should know. She's hired a lawyer. Ethan went still. For what? Her termination. She's claiming it was unjust, that she was provoked, that you... Jonathan stopped, choosing his words carefully. She's building a case that you baited her deliberately, that you came here in disguise specifically to create a situation that would justify firing her. I came here to see how my staff treats guests. I know that, you know that, but her lawyer is arguing entrapment, that you manipulated the situation to get the reaction you wanted. Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. I asked to check in. I showed a valid reservation. I was polite and patient even when I was being dismissed and humiliated. At what point did I provoke being struck? You didn't. But she's claiming the emotional distress of the situation, learning you were the owner, facing immediate termination in front of colleagues, caused a momentary lapse in judgment. A momentary lapse? Ethan's voice was flat. Is that what we're calling assault now? I'm just telling you what her lawyer is saying. He's also claiming that without a formal warning system, without documented prior complaints, the termination was too severe for a first offense. First offense we know about. Exactly, which is why the security footage is crucial. If we can show a pattern of discriminatory behavior, it strengthens our position. Jonathan met Ethan's eyes. But sir, I need to be honest with you. This is going to get messy. Claire has worked here for 3 years. She has relationships with other staff members. Some of them are going to defend her. Some are going to claim you're overreacting. And if she goes public with her side of the story, then she goes public. I'm not going to be bullied into backing down because she hired a lawyer. Ethan checked his watch, 7:40. What time are the attorneys arriving? 9 o'clock. I thought you'd want to meet with staff first without legal present. Keep it more personal. Good thinking. Ethan started toward the conference room, Jonathan falling into step beside him. Have you reviewed all the footage? Most of it. There are hours more to go through, but what I've seen is concerning. There's definitely preferential treatment based on appearance and perceived wealth. Whether it rises to the level of discrimination we can act on legally, that's for the attorneys to determine. I don't need attorneys to tell me it's wrong. No, but you need them to tell you how to fix it without exposing the resort to lawsuits. Jonathan paused. Mr. Brooks, I want to be clear about something. I support what you're doing completely. This needed to happen, but it's going to be painful and it's going to cost money, and some good people are going to get caught in the blast radius alongside the ones who deserve it. Are you prepared for that? Ethan stopped walking. They were in a side hallway now, away from guest areas, the sounds of the lobby distant. "Jonathan, did you know this was happening?" "Not to this extent. I knew we had some staff who were better with certain guests than others. I chalked it up to personality differences, experience levels, natural chemistry. I didn't see it as systematic discrimination. But you see it now." "Yes. And what would you do if this was your decision?" Jonathan was quiet for a moment. "I'd do exactly what you're doing. I'd burn it down and rebuild it right. But I've been a general manager for 15 years, and I've never seen an overhaul like this that didn't leave casualties. People who made one bad call on one bad day. People who were following the example set by others. People who genuinely didn't know they were doing anything wrong because no one ever told them it was wrong. Then we tell them now." Ethan resumed walking. "And if they can't adjust, they find other jobs. I'm not running a charity for people who need to be explicitly instructed not to judge guests by their appearance." They reached the conference room. Through the glass walls, Ethan could see staff already gathering. Housekeepers in their uniforms, front desk clerks in blazers, restaurant servers in pressed black pants and white shirts, maintenance workers in resort-branded polos. The room was designed to hold 60 comfortably. Today it would hold more than twice that, with people standing along the walls, sitting on the floor, crowding in doorways. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. Jonathan opened the door. Conversation stopped as Ethan entered. 127 pairs of eyes tracked him across the room to the small raised platform at the front. A microphone stood waiting. Behind him, a large screen displayed the resort's logo. Ethan took the platform. The room was silent except for the rustle of bodies shifting, trying to get comfortable in the cramped space. He looked out at the faces before him, young and old, experienced and new, anxious and defiant and confused. These were his employees, his responsibility, his failure. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice steady. "I know this meeting was mandatory, and I know many of you have questions. I'm going to answer those questions, but first, I need to tell you who I am and why I'm here." A few people glanced at each other. Most kept their eyes on him. "My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm the owner of this resort. Some of you may have heard rumors about what happened in the lobby yesterday. Those rumors are true. I arrived as a guest, dressed as myself, not in a suit, not announcing my position. I wanted to see how ordinary guests are treated when they check in. What I experienced was discrimination, humiliation, and ultimately physical assault from someone in a position of authority." The silence deepened. Someone in the back shifted uncomfortably. "Claire Whitman is no longer employed here. Marcus Chen, Rachel Okoye, and Diane Porter are on administrative leave pending investigation. Those decisions are final and non-negotiable." Ethan paused. "But I'm not here to talk about them. I'm here to talk about all of us, about the culture we've created in this building, about what we've allowed to become normal." He gestured to Jonathan, who dimmed the lights and started the security footage on the screen. The first clip played, a well-dressed couple receiving instant, warm service. Then the second clip, a woman in ordinary clothes waiting, ignored, while staff helped others who'd arrived after her. "This is from 2 weeks ago," Ethan said quietly. "Watch the difference in how these two guests are treated. Watch the smiles, the body language, the urgency or lack of it." The clips continued. 5 minutes of curated footage showing the pattern clearly. By the third clip, some staff members were looking at their hands. Others watched with expressions of dawning recognition. A few looked angry, defensive, like they were preparing arguments. When the footage ended, Ethan turned the lights back up. "Some of you are thinking this is taken out of context, that there were legitimate reasons for the delays, the different treatment, the skepticism shown to certain guests." He met their eyes. Maybe there were. Maybe those guests had complicated reservations. Maybe their credit cards needed extra verification. Maybe the staff were just having bad days. He let that sit for a moment. But if that's true, then why does it keep happening to the same type of guest? Why are people in expensive clothes never asked to verify their reservations 3 times? Why do guests with designer luggage never wait 20 minutes while we check the system? Why does someone in a suit get offered champagne while someone in jeans gets skepticism? A woman near the front, A housekeeper Ethan didn't recognize raised her hand tentatively. Yes? With respect, sir, we're trained to provide enhanced service to VIP guests, people who stay in premium suites, who have membership status, who request special amenities. That's not discrimination. That's business. You're right, Ethan said. It is business. But tell me, how do you know someone's a VIP before you check them in? How do you know they're not staying in a premium suite if you haven't looked at their reservation yet? She hesitated. We can usually tell. How? Their luggage, their clothes, the way they carry themselves. So you make assumptions based on appearance, and then you treat them accordingly. Ethan's voice was gentle, not accusatory. Do you see the problem with that? She looked down. I guess I never thought about it that way. A lot of people don't. That's why we're having this conversation. Ethan walked to the edge of the platform. Let me tell you about the guest who checked in right before me yesterday. Expensive luggage, designer clothes, confident manner. He was greeted like an old friend, checked in within 2 minutes, offered a drink, escorted to his room personally. Do you know what suite he's in? No one answered. A standard room, not even ocean view. He's paying the base rate, staying 2 nights, no special requests. He's not a VIP by any metric we actually use, but he looked like one, so he was treated like one. Ethan paused. Now let me tell you about me. I had a confirmed reservation for the penthouse suite. 7 nights. I own this building, but I was wearing old jeans and a worn jacket, so I was assumed to be nobody. I was made to wait. I was questioned. I was humiliated. And when I calmly asked for the respect I'd already paid for, I was struck. The room was absolutely still. That guest in the standard room didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I. But we were treated as opposite extremes because of assumptions made in seconds based on nothing but appearance. That's the culture I'm here to change. A man in a maintenance uniform spoke up from the back. So what happens to us? Are we all getting fired? No. You're all getting a choice. Ethan crossed his arms. I'm implementing a new training program starting next week. Every employee who interacts with guests will go through it. It's going to cover unconscious bias, equal service standards, and the actual policies we should have been following all along. At the end of that training, you'll be asked to sign an acknowledgement that you understand and agree to uphold those standards. And if we don't sign, then you'll be offered a severance package and a neutral reference. No hard feelings. This job just isn't for you. A young woman near the middle, she looked barely old enough to work here, raised her voice. But what if we didn't know we were doing anything wrong? What if we were just doing what we were trained to do? Then you learn better and do better going forward. That's why this is training, not punishment. Ethan's voice softened. Look, I'm not standing here pretending I'm perfect. I built this place. I hired the managers who set the tone. I was so focused on revenue and ratings that I didn't pay attention to the actual guest experience. That's on me. I own that failure. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as he could. But now we fix it. Together. Because here's what I believe. Most of you didn't come to work here planning to discriminate against anyone. You came here because you wanted a good job at a beautiful property. You wanted to provide excellent service and make people's vacations memorable. Somewhere along the way, the culture twisted that intention into something else. We started defining excellent service as making rich people feel special, instead of making every person feel valued. A server near the side door spoke up. What about the guests who complain when they don't get special treatment? The ones who expect extras because they're used to getting them? What about them? We get written up if guests complain. Our performance reviews suffer. So we learn to give certain guests extra attention to avoid complaints. That's not bias. That's survival. I understand that. And that's another policy we're changing. Starting now, no employee will be penalized for treating all guests equally. If a guest complains because they didn't receive preferential treatment they weren't entitled to, that complaint won't affect your review. Management will handle it. Jonathan, standing near the back, nodded in confirmation. But, Ethan continued, if a guest complains because they were ignored, dismissed, or treated disrespectfully while others receive better service, that complaint will be taken seriously, and there will be consequences. A tense silence followed. An older man in a bellhop uniform finally broke it. "Mr. Brooks, I've worked here since opening day, 7 years. I've seen managers come and go. I've seen policy changes that lasted a month before everyone went back to old habits. How do we know this isn't just another temporary push that disappears once you leave?" "Because I'm not leaving," Ethan said quietly. "I've been an absentee owner for too long. That changes now. I'll be spending more time on property. I'll be visible. And I'll be watching how we treat people when we think no one important is looking, because everyone is important." The bellhop nodded slowly. "Fair enough?" Ethan checked his watch. 7:55. "I know this is a lot to process. You're going to leave here with questions, concerns, maybe anger. That's okay. My door is open. Jonathan's door is open. You can speak with us directly, or you can submit anonymous feedback through the new system we're implementing. But what you cannot do is continue treating guests differently based on assumptions about their worth." He looked around the room one last time. "We're going to be better. Not because I'm forcing you, not because you're scared of being fired, but because it's the right thing to do. And because every person who walks through those doors deserves to feel welcome in the place they've chosen to spend their time and money." He paused. "That's all. Training schedules will be posted by end of day. If you have questions, talk to your department managers or come find me. Thank you." The room stayed quiet for a beat. Then people began to stand, to file out, conversations starting in low murmurs that would grow louder once they were out of earshot. Ethan watched them go, trying to read the reactions. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked worried. A few looked angry, resentful, like they were already planning to find jobs elsewhere. That was fine. Better to lose the people who couldn't adjust than to keep them and watch the culture rot from within. When the room had cleared except for Jonathan and a handful of department managers, Ethan stepped down from the platform. His legs felt heavy. His shoulders ached with tension. Jonathan approached. "That went better than I expected." "Did it?" "No one walked out. No one shouted. You got them thinking." "Thinking isn't the same as changing." "No, but it's the first step." Jonathan glanced at his tablet. "The attorneys are here early. They're waiting in your office." "Well, in the office I set up for you. I didn't think you'd want to use Claire's old space." "Good call." Ethan followed Jonathan down a corridor away from guest areas, through a door marked administration, and into a spacious office with windows overlooking the gardens. 2 people in suits stood as he entered, a man and a woman, both carrying briefcases that probably cost more than most of his employees made in a month. "Mr. Brooks." The woman extended her hand. "Patricia Chen, Employment Law. This is David Ostroff, Corporate Litigation. Thank you for meeting with us." They spent the next hour reviewing the legal landscape. Claire's claims of unjust termination, the assault captured on camera, the discrimination patterns in the security footage, the potential exposure if other former employees decided to sue, the need for documentation, clear policies, consistent enforcement. Patricia was blunt. "Mr. Brooks, your instinct to reform is admirable, but from a legal standpoint, you're walking a tightrope. If you terminate too many people too quickly, you open yourself to claims of mass layoffs without cause. If you're too lenient, you create precedent that this behavior is acceptable. And if you move forward with criminal charges against Ms. Whitman, you invite a very public lawsuit that will air every detail of what happened, including your decision to, as her lawyer will frame it, conduct a sting operation on your own staff. It wasn't a sting operation, it was a quality check. I know that. You know that. But perception matters in court, and the perception her lawyer will create is of a wealthy owner playing games with working-class employees' livelihoods." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "So what's your recommendation?" "Settle with Ms. Whitman quietly. No admission of wrongdoing on either side. Severance package in exchange for a release of all claims and an NDA. She goes away, you move forward with reforms, everyone moves on." "She hit me." "I know. In front of witnesses." "I know. And you want me to pay her to keep quiet about it?" Patricia's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I want you to protect your business and your employees from a protracted legal battle that benefits no one except lawyers. This isn't about justice, Mr. Brooks. It's about pragmatism." Ethan stood and walked to the window. Below, guests lounged by the pool, oblivious to the turmoil unfolding in the administrative wing. A family played in the shallow end, the father lifting a small child high above the water while the mother took pictures. Normal. Simple. Everything Ethan had wanted when he'd built this place. What does she want? David opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. 6 months severance, a neutral reference, no criminal charges, an NDA that prevents either party from discussing the circumstances of her termination. That's it? That's what her lawyer communicated this morning. It's actually quite reasonable given the circumstances. Reasonable. Ethan turned back to them. She humiliated me, discriminated against me, and assaulted me. And paying her half a year's salary to go away quietly is reasonable? Compared to a lawsuit that could cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees, damage your reputation, and distract from the legitimate reforms you're trying to implement? Yes, it's reasonable. Ethan looked at Jonathan. What do you think? I think it makes me sick. But I also think Patricia's right. Dragging this out publicly doesn't serve anyone. Jonathan met his eyes. Except maybe your ego. The words stung because they were true. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about fixing a broken system. And sometimes fixing things required swallowing anger and accepting imperfect solutions. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, thinking of Jamie arriving in a few hours. Thinking of the drawing on his nightstand. Thinking of the kind of father he wanted to be. One who chose wisdom over satisfaction, who understood that winning wasn't always about crushing your opponent. Draft the settlement, he said finally. I'll review it, but I want one additional term. What's that? Claire doesn't work in hospitality again. Not at this property. Not at any property I have influence with. Not anywhere she could repeat this pattern. Patricia shook her head. We can't legally prevent her from seeking employment in her field. Then make the severance conditional. If she takes another hospitality position within 2 years, she forfeits the remaining payments. That might work. I'll include it in the draft. They talked through more details, timelines, communication strategies, how to handle questions from staff and press if word leaked. By the time the attorneys left, it was nearly 10 o'clock, and Ethan felt hollowed out. Jonathan walked them to the door, then returned. You made the right call. Did I? Yes. Because the alternative was spending the next year in depositions and courtrooms instead of here, doing the actual work that matters. Jonathan sat across from him. And because, whether you want to admit it or not, Claire Whitman is a symptom of a larger disease. Destroying her doesn't cure the disease. I know. Do you because you've got that look, the one that says you feel like you're letting her get away with something? Ethan rubbed his face. I wanted there to be consequences, real ones, not just a check and a confidentiality agreement. There are consequences. She lost her job. Her reputation in this industry is finished whether or not there's an NDA, and she has to live with knowing what she did. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. That's the price of choosing the high road. Jonathan stood. Your son will be here soon. Why don't you take a break? Clear your head. Be ready for him. Ethan nodded. Yeah, okay. But as Jonathan left and Ethan sat alone in the office, he couldn't shake the feeling that something essential had been compromised. Justice bent in the name of practicality. Accountability softened to protect the bottom line. His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. 30 minutes out. Jamie's been singing Under the Sea for the last hour. Prepare yourself. Ethan smiled despite everything. He stood, straightened his shirt, and headed back to his suite to change into something more appropriate for a day at the beach with his son. As he walked through the resort corridors, he passed staff members who'd been at the meeting. Some nodded respectfully. Others avoided eye contact. The building felt different now, tension humming beneath the polished surface, everyone walking carefully, aware they were being watched. It would take time to rebuild trust. Time to prove this wasn't just talk. Time to show that real change was possible. But time was something Ethan had, and he would use every second of it to make this place worthy of the dream that had built it. Ethan had just finished changing into shorts and a casual shirt when his phone rang. Lauren's name flashed on the screen, and he could hear Jamie's excited voice in the background before he even answered. Dad! Dad! We can see the ocean! It's so big! Ethan pressed the phone to his ear, grinning despite the weight still sitting on his chest from the morning's meetings. "Hey, buddy, you're almost here? Lauren says 5 more minutes. I can't wait. Did you find any sharks yet?" "Not yet, but I've been looking." "Keep looking. I'm going to help when I get there." Lauren's voice came through, amused and slightly exasperated. "Ethan, we're pulling up to the entrance now. Where should we meet you?" "I'll come down to the lobby. Give me 2 minutes." He hung up and took a moment to look around the suite. The bed was made, courtesy of housekeeping who'd slipped in while he was in meetings. Fresh towels hung in the bathroom. Everything perfect and pristine, as if yesterday's confrontation had never happened. But it had happened, and the ripples were still spreading through the building, touching everyone whether they realized it yet or not. Ethan pushed those thoughts aside. Right now, he needed to be just a father, nothing more. He took the elevator down, emerging into a lobby that looked different in morning light, brighter, busier, filled with guests checking out or heading to activities. The front desk was staffed by people he didn't recognize from yesterday, temporary replacements brought in to cover the suspended employees. They worked efficiently but with visible nervousness, hyper-aware that the owner was somewhere in the building, watching. The automatic doors opened and Jamie burst through like a small hurricane, his eyes enormous as he took in the marble floors, the chandelier, the sweeping staircases. Then he saw Ethan and ran, sneakers squeaking on polished stone. "Dad!" Ethan caught him, lifting him up despite the fact that Jamie was getting too big for this, too heavy for Ethan's aging back. But some things mattered more than practicality, and the feel of his son's arms around his neck was one of them. "I missed you," Jamie said into his shoulder. "I missed you too, kiddo. So much." Lauren followed at a more reasonable pace, rolling a small suitcase and wearing the expression of someone who'd spent 2 hours in a car with an overexcited 7-year-old. She hugged Ethan once he set Jamie down, holding on a beat longer than usual. "You look tired," she said quietly. "I am, but I'm good." She studied his face, clearly wanting to ask more, but Jamie was already pulling on Ethan's hand. "Can we go to the beach now? Right now?" "Let's get your aunt checked in first, okay? Then we'll go." "But Dad..." "Jamie." Ethan knelt down to eye level. "The beach isn't going anywhere. It'll still be there in 10 minutes. Jamie deflated slightly, but nodded. "Okay. But fast, right? Fast as we can." Ethan led them to the front desk where a young man with a name tag reading Kevin looked up with a professional smile that tightened slightly when he recognized Ethan. Word had definitely spread. "Mr. Brooks, how can I help you?" "This is my sister, Lauren Brooks. She has a reservation." Kevin's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Yes, of course, Miss Brooks. I have you in a deluxe room, garden view, checking in today for 6 nights. Is that correct?" "That's right," Lauren said. "Wonderful. I just need a credit card and ID for incidentals." The transaction took less than 3 minutes. Kevin was polite, efficient, and treated Lauren with the same warmth he'd probably give any guest. No hesitation, no judgment. Either he was naturally good at his job, or the morning's meeting had already changed how people approached their work. Ethan wanted to believe it was both. "Your room is ready," Kevin said, handing over key cards. "Elevators are just past the concierge desk. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "We're good, thank you." As they walked toward the elevators, Jamie peppered Ethan with questions about the resort, the pool, the beach, whether there were any secret passages or hidden rooms. Lauren caught Ethan's eye and mouthed later, clearly wanting a real conversation when small ears weren't listening. They dropped Lauren's bag in her room, 2 floors below Ethan's suite, overlooking gardens that were genuinely beautiful in the morning sun. Jamie immediately ran to the window, pressing his face against the glass. "I can see the pool, and there's a slide. Dad, there's a slide." "We'll check it out later." "Can we go to the beach now?" Lauren laughed. "Go, I need a shower and about 17 cups of coffee. I'll meet you guys for lunch. 1 o'clock at the beachside cafe? Perfect." Ethan and Jamie headed back to the penthouse suite to grab sunscreen and towels. Jamie's eyes went wide when he saw the space. It was easily 3 times the size of their apartment back home. "You live here?" "Just for this week. It's like a castle." "It's a hotel room, bud." A really, really big hotel room. Jamie ran to the windows. "Whoa! You can see everything." Ethan joined him, and together they stood looking out at the Atlantic stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The beach below was already dotted with umbrellas and loungers, families claiming their spots for the day. "You ready?" Ethan asked. Jamie turned to him, face glowing. "I've been ready my whole life." They made their way down to the beach through a private resort access path lined with tropical plants and flowers. Jamie stopped to examine every few feet. The sand was white and soft, the water a clear turquoise that seemed almost artificial in its perfection. Ethan found them a spot away from the crowds, spread out towels, and watched Jamie's face as he took in the ocean up close for the first time. "It's loud," Jamie said, awed. "Yeah, it is. And it keeps moving. It doesn't stop." "Nope, never has, never will." Jamie took off his shoes and ran to the water's edge, letting the waves chase his feet back and forth. His laughter carried over the sound of surf, pure and uncomplicated, and Ethan felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't even realized was tight. This was why he'd built the resort. Not for profit or prestige, but for moments like this. Families making memories, children discovering wonder, people finding peace away from whatever complicated their daily lives. He'd just forgotten that somewhere along the way. They spent the next 2 hours building an ambitious sandcastle that kept getting destroyed by waves, hunting for shells that Jamie insisted they had to keep all of, and playing a game where Ethan had to guess what kind of fish Jamie was pretending to be. It was perfect and exhausting, and exactly what Ethan needed. At one point, Jamie stopped mid-construction on their third attempt at a sandcastle and looked at Ethan seriously. "Dad, are you okay?" Ethan brushed sand from his hands. "Yeah, buddy. Why?" "You seem sad, like when you're thinking about work stuff." 7 years old, and he could read Ethan like a book. "I am thinking about work stuff a little bit, but I'm also really happy to be here with you." "Is the work stuff bad?" "It's complicated. Some people weren't being very nice, and I had to help them understand why that's not okay." Jamie considered this. "Like when Tommy pushed Alex at recess and the teacher made him sit out?" "Kind of like that, yeah." Did you make them sit out?" "Something like that." "Good. People should be nice." Jamie returned to his sandcastle, with the matter settled in his mind, and Ethan wished adult problems could be resolved with the same clear-cut logic. By the time they met Lauren for lunch, both Ethan and Jamie were 80, sun-warmed, and hungry. The beachside cafe was casual and open air, with ceiling fans turning lazily overhead and a menu focused on fresh seafood and tropical drinks. Lauren was already seated at a table with a view of the water, looking considerably more refreshed than she had that morning. Jamie immediately launched into a detailed description of their morning, complete with hand gestures demonstrating the size of the waves and the tragic destruction of Sandcastle Number 2. Lauren listened with appropriate interest, asking questions and laughing in all the right places. When Jamie excused himself to watch the fish in the decorative pond near the cafe's entrance, Lauren's expression shifted. "Okay, talk. What happened yesterday that has you looking like you went 3 rounds with your conscience?" Ethan had known this was coming, but he still wasn't sure how much to tell her. Lauren had been his anchor through the divorce, through the early impossible years of the resort, through every crisis that had threatened to pull him under. She deserved honesty. So he told her. All of it. The discrimination at check-in, the confrontation with Claire, the slap, the revelation of his identity, the staff meeting that morning, the attorneys and the settlement negotiations. Lauren listened without interrupting, her face cycling through shock, anger, and finally something that looked like sad recognition. "God, Ethan." "Yeah." "Are you okay? Really?" "I don't know. I keep thinking I should feel vindicated or satisfied or something. I exposed a real problem. I'm fixing it, but mostly I just feel tired and kind of sick about the whole thing. Because you're not a vengeful person, and this whole situation required you to act like one. I wasn't trying to be vengeful. I just wanted accountability. Which looks a lot like vengeance when you're the one holding the power." Lauren reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "But Ethan, what that woman did to you, what all of them did, that was wrong. You didn't create that situation. You just revealed it." "I know, but now I have to figure out what comes next. How do I rebuild a culture I didn't even realize was broken? How do I make sure this changes permanently and doesn't just revert the moment I'm not actively watching? The same way you built this place to begin with. One careful decision at a time, one person at a time. You can't fix everything overnight. Claire's lawyer wants a settlement, 6 months severance, and an NDA. My attorneys say it's the smart play. What do you say? Ethan watched Jamie at the pond, crouched down to get a better look at a bright orange fish. I say I hate it, but I also think they're right. Dragging this through court doesn't serve anyone except lawyers and journalists. Then you make peace with it and move forward. Just like that? No, not just like that. It'll bother you. You'll wonder if you did the right thing. You'll second-guess yourself at 3 in the morning. That's what people with consciences do. Lauren smiled sadly. But you'll keep going anyway, because that's what fathers do. That's what good men do. Jamie ran back to the table. Dad, there's a really fat fish and he has whiskers. Can fish have whiskers? Some fish can. Those are called barbells. Barbells, like for lifting weights? Not quite, but close. Their food arrived, fish tacos for Ethan, a grilled cheese for Jamie, and a salad for Lauren that she immediately began picking the tomatoes out of. They ate and talked about normal things, safe things. The kind of conversation that let Ethan pretend for a while that he was just a dad on vacation with his son and sister. After lunch, Lauren took Jamie to the pool while Ethan returned to his suite for a conference call with his legal team. The settlement terms were finalized. Claire would receive her severance in monthly installments over 6 months, conditional on her not working in hospitality during that period and maintaining the confidentiality agreement. No admission of wrongdoing from either party. A clean break. Ethan signed the documents electronically, feeling like he was signing away something more than just a legal settlement. But it was done. Claire Whitman would fade from his life as quickly as she'd disrupted it, leaving only the lessons learned and the changes implemented. By the time he finished, it was nearly 3 o'clock. He changed into swim trunks and headed to the pool to find Jamie and Lauren. The pool area was crowded with families, couples, groups of friends, all soaking up the afternoon sun. He spotted Jamie immediately, in the shallow end, wearing inflatable arm floaties despite his protests that he was too old for them, playing with 2 other kids around his age. Lauren waved from a lounge chair. He made friends in approximately 4 seconds. Of course he did. Ethan sat on the chair beside her. He gets that from you. I was the awkward kid who brought books to the pool. You still bring books to the pool. Fair point. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Jamie laugh and splash with his new companions. Somewhere to Ethan's left, a server moved between chairs taking drink orders. To his right, a family argued quietly about whether it was time to apply more sunscreen. Normal resort sounds. Normal resort life. Can I ask you something? Lauren said after a while. Always. Do you think you'll ever stop punishing yourself for the divorce? Ethan turned to look at her. What? Every time you talk about building this place, about missing Jamie's birthdays and school events, about not being there enough, there's this guilt in your voice, like you think you have to earn back time you lost. I do have to earn it back. No, you have to be present now. That's different. Lauren adjusted her sunglasses. Sarah made her choices, you made yours. Neither of you is the villain in that story, but you keep acting like you are, like you owe Jamie some kind of cosmic debt for not having a perfect family. He deserves better than what we gave him. He deserves honesty, stability, and love, which is exactly what you're giving him. The rest, the big house, the perfect vacation, the constant guilt-driven overcompensation, that's for you, not for him. Ethan felt the words land harder than he wanted to admit. I just want him to know he matters more than anything else. He knows. Trust me. He knows. Lauren gestured toward the pool where Jamie was now showing one of the other kids how to do a handstand underwater. Look at him. Does that look like a kid who feels neglected? No. Then maybe it's time you stopped feeling like a neglectful parent. Before Ethan could respond, Jamie popped up from underwater and called out, Dad, watch this. Then he attempted an underwater handstand that resulted in him toppling sideways and coming up sputtering but laughing. Ethan applauded. Very impressive. I'm going to keep practicing until I can do it perfect. That's the spirit. Jamie dove back under, and Ethan felt something shift inside him. Not a dramatic revelation, but a quiet acknowledgement that maybe Lauren was right. Maybe he had been carrying guilt that didn't serve anyone, least of all his son. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the pool, eventually ordering snacks and drinks and settling into the lazy rhythm of vacation time. Around 5, they headed back to shower and change for dinner. Ethan had made reservations at the resort's upscale restaurant, a place with white tablecloths and a dress code that allowed for resort casual, which Ethan interpreted as the nicest clothes he'd packed that didn't require dry cleaning. The restaurant was on the top floor, accessible by a glass elevator that gave Jamie an excuse to press his face against the windows the entire ride up. The host greeted them warmly and led them to a table by the windows where the sun was just beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jamie stared at the menu with wide eyes. "Dad, they have lobster." "They do. Can I have lobster? If that's what you want." "Really?" Ethan smiled. "It's a special vacation. We can have special food." Jamie looked at the menu with renewed interest, though Ethan suspected he'd end up ordering chicken fingers anyway. Sure enough, when the server arrived, Jamie's resolve crumbled. Can I have the chicken tenders with fries?" The server smiled. "Excellent choice. And for the adults?" Lauren ordered the salmon. Ethan chose the local catch of the day. They ordered a bottle of wine for the table and apple juice for Jamie, who insisted on toasting with them when the drinks arrived. "What are we toasting to?" Jamie asked. Ethan thought about the past 48 hours. The confrontations and revelations, the anger and disappointment, the settlements and reforms. All of it felt very far away in this moment, looking at his son's expectant face in the golden light of sunset. "To family," he said finally, "and to being exactly where we're supposed to be." They clinked glasses, and Jamie took a very serious sip of his apple juice before announcing, "This is the best day ever." Lauren caught Ethan's eye and smiled. "See?" her expression said. "This is what matters." Dinner was excellent. Jamie's chicken tenders came with a sauce he declared probably the best sauce in the entire world, and he ate every bite. Ethan's fish was perfectly prepared, and Lauren proclaimed her salmon worth the price. They talked and laughed, and for a while Ethan let himself exist only in this moment. But as they were finishing dessert, a chocolate lava cake Jamie insisted they all share, Ethan noticed someone standing near their table. He looked up to find Jonathan, dressed in his usual suit despite the late hour, his expression apologetic. "Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is everything all right? There's a situation that requires your attention. Nothing urgent, but when you have a moment, I'd appreciate if you could stop by the office." Ethan glanced at Jamie, who was attempting to get every last bit of chocolate off his plate. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" "It could, but I think you'd want to handle it tonight." Something in Jonathan's tone made Ethan nod. "Okay. Give me 20 minutes to get Jamie and Lauren settled." "Of course, I'll be in the office." After Jonathan left, Lauren raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay?" "I don't know yet. Probably just some administrative thing that can't wait until business hours." Ethan signed the check and stood. "Let me walk you guys to your room, then I'll go see what he needs." They took the elevator down, Jamie yawning now that the excitement and sugar rush were wearing off. At Lauren's door, Ethan kissed the top of his son's head. "I'll see you in the morning, okay?" "Okay. Can we build sandcastles again?" "Absolutely." "Promise?" "Promise." Lauren gave Ethan a look that said, "Be careful without words," then ushered Jamie inside. Ethan headed to the administrative wing, where lights were still on in the main office despite the hour. Jonathan was waiting with another man Ethan didn't recognize, middle-aged, wearing jeans and a resort polo, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Brooks, this is Marcus Chen. He was one of the front desk employees suspended yesterday." Ethan's guard went up immediately. "What's this about?" Marcus shifted his weight. "I wanted to talk to you, sir. Apologize. And tell you something I think you should know." "I'm listening." "What happened at check-in yesterday? I should have said something. I knew it was wrong. I could see Ms. Whitman was treating you differently than other guests, and I stood there. I didn't want to get involved. I didn't want to risk my job." He met Ethan's eyes. That was cowardly. I'm sorry. Ethan studied him. Okay, thank you for the apology. But Jonathan said there was something else? Marcus nodded. There is. And before I tell you, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to deflect blame or make excuses. I own what I did. But you should know that Ms. Whitman's behavior, the way she treated certain guests, it wasn't new, and it wasn't isolated. Go on. 6 months ago, maybe 7, we had a guest. An older black gentleman, very polite, had a confirmed reservation. Ms. Whitman made him wait over an hour, kept saying the system was having issues, that she needed to verify his payment, all these excuses. Finally, she told him the room wasn't available and he'd have to find other accommodations. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Why? Because she didn't think he belonged here. She never said it outright, but we all knew. Some of us talked about reporting it, but Marcus shrugged helplessly. Ms. Whitman was the operations manager. We reported to her. Who were we supposed to tell? What happened to the guest? He left. I don't know if he ever got a refund or filed a complaint, but Mr. Brooks, he wasn't the only one. There were others. Not many, maybe one every few months, but enough that it became this thing we all knew about but didn't talk about. Jonathan's face was grim. This is the first I'm hearing of this. I believe you, sir. Miss Whitman was careful. She never did it when senior management was around. And she made it clear that anyone who spoke up would regret it. Marcus looked at Ethan. I know that's not an excuse. We should have found a way to report it anyway, but I wanted you to know it was a pattern, and there might be other people out there who had experiences like yours who never got an apology or acknowledgement. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Claire's lawyer had framed her actions as a one-time lapse in judgment brought on by stress and unusual circumstances. But this suggested something else entirely. A calculated pattern of discrimination that had gone unchecked for months, maybe longer. Do you have names? Ethan asked. Dates? Any documentation? Not formal documentation, no, but I remember some of them, and there might be security footage if you go back far enough. Ethan looked at Jonathan. How long does security footage stay in the system? We keep it for 90 days, then it's archived. Archived footage is stored for a year. Pull everything we have, 6 months minimum. I want every incident Marcus can remember reviewed. Sir, that's going to be dozens of hours of footage. I don't care. I want to know the scope of this. I want to know exactly how many people were treated this way. Ethan turned back to Marcus. Thank you for coming forward. I know it wasn't easy. Will this affect my suspension? I don't know yet. That's not a decision I'm making tonight. Ethan paused. But for what it's worth, you did the right thing telling me this. After Marcus left, Ethan sank into a chair. Jonathan poured 2 glasses of water from the cooler in the corner and handed one to Ethan. This changes things, Jonathan said. The settlement? If we can document a pattern of discriminatory behavior, Claire's claim that this was an isolated incident falls apart. Her lawyer's entire defense is based on the premise that she made one bad call under extraordinary circumstances. Can we reopen negotiations? We can try. But Ethan, you need to think about what you're really trying to accomplish here. Do you want justice for those other guests? Do you want Claire punished more severely? Or do you want this over so you can focus on moving forward? Ethan drank his water, stalling. I want all of it. I want those guests to know we failed them. I want Claire to face real consequences. And I want to move forward, but those things don't all fit together neatly. No, they don't, which is why you need to prioritize. What would you do? Jonathan sat on the edge of the desk. Honestly, I'd honor the settlement as negotiated. It's done. It's signed. Reopening it now just prolongs the fight. But I'd also reach out to every guest we can identify who was discriminated against. Apologize directly. Offer compensation. Make it right individually rather than trying to make Claire pay for all of it. That could get expensive. Less expensive than a class action lawsuit if those guests decide to come forward on their own. And more importantly, it's the right thing to do. Ethan set down his glass. Okay, start pulling footage tomorrow. Build a list of incidents. Then we'll figure out how to contact those guests. He stood. Is there anything else that can't wait? No. Go be with your family. Ethan headed back to his suite, his mind churning with new information and old anger. The ocean was dark beyond his windows, barely visible except where moonlight caught the foam of breaking waves. He thought about that older gentleman Marcus had mentioned, forced to leave after being made to wait an hour for a room he'd legitimately reserved. That man had probably told people about his experience, probably warned friends away from the Grand Oceanic, probably carried that humiliation with him. And Ethan hadn't known, hadn't even suspected. He pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app, typing quickly before he lost the thought. Implement anonymous reporting system. Direct line to ownership, bypassing management. Monthly reviews of guest complaints regardless of whether they're formal. Random check-ins by third-party evaluators to catch patterns. The list grew. Each item was a small piece of the larger puzzle of how to ensure this never happened again. It wouldn't be perfect. There would always be gaps, always be people who slipped through. But it would be better than what they'd had. His phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Jamie wants to say goodnight. A moment later, a photo appeared. Jamie in his pajamas, giving the camera a huge grin and a thumbs up. Then another text from Lauren. He's asleep now. Today was perfect for him. Thank you. Ethan typed back. Thank you for bringing him. For everything. That's what family does. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's another day. She was right. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities to either honor his principles or compromise them. Tonight, he'd made progress. He'd learned difficult truths. He'd spent time with the people who mattered most. That would have to be enough. Ethan changed into comfortable clothes, set his alarm for 7, and lay down in the massive bed with its perfect sheets and too many pillows. Through the window, he could hear the ocean's constant rhythm, a sound that had existed long before he built this resort and would continue long after he was gone. It was humbling in a way he needed. And as sleep finally came, his last thought was of Jamie's face at dinner, lit by candlelight and sunset, declaring this the best day ever, with the absolute certainty that only children possess. Tomorrow, Ethan would work to make the resort worthy of that innocence. Tonight, he rested. The next 3 days passed in a rhythm that felt both ordinary and transformative. Mornings with Jamie on the beach, building increasingly elaborate sandcastles that the tide claimed each evening. Afternoons at the pool or exploring the resort grounds, Jamie making friends with other children while Ethan and Lauren watched from lounge chairs, talking about everything and nothing. Dinners together, sometimes at the resort's restaurants, sometimes ordering room service and eating on the balcony while the sun set over the Atlantic. But woven through those perfect vacation moments were the harder tasks Ethan had set for himself. Early mornings reviewing security footage before Jamie woke up. Late evenings on conference calls with attorneys and HR consultants. Meetings with Jonathan to discuss the training program rollout. The anonymous reporting system. The guest outreach initiative. The footage review had identified 11 incidents over the past 6 months where guests had been visibly treated differently based on appearance. 11 people who'd been made to feel unwelcome in a place they'd chosen and paid for. Jonathan's team had managed to identify 8 of them through reservation records, credit card information, and the meticulous detective work of cross-referencing dates and descriptions. On the 4th morning of his stay, Ethan sat in his makeshift office with a list of names and phone numbers in front of him. 8 people he needed to call. 8 apologies he needed to make. He started with the oldest incident, a woman named Patricia Morrison who'd checked in 7 months ago and been made to wait 40 minutes while staff attended to other guests. According to Marcus's recollection and the footage confirmation, Claire had been the manager on duty that day too. Ethan dialed. The phone rang 3 times before a cautious voice answered. Hello, Ms. Morrison? My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm the owner of the Grand Oceanic Resort. I'm calling about your stay with us last September. There was a pause. I'm sorry, who? The owner of the resort where you stayed. I'm calling to apologize. Another pause, longer this time. Is this some kind of sales call? Because I'm not interested in... It's not a sales call, I promise. I'm calling because we've discovered that during your check-in, you were treated in a way that was discriminatory and completely unacceptable. I wanted to personally apologize and make things right. The silence on the other end stretched so long, Ethan wondered if she'd hung up. Then, how did you even know about that? We've been reviewing our security footage and guest interactions. Your experience was brought to my attention, and I'm appalled by what happened. You deserve better. I waited 40 minutes, Patricia said, her voice quiet but carrying an edge of old anger. I watched them check in 6 other guests who arrived after me. When I asked why it was taking so long, they acted like I was being difficult. I know. I saw the footage. And Miss Morrison, there's no excuse for it. The staff member primarily responsible is no longer with the company, but that doesn't undo what you experienced. No, it doesn't. Which is why I'd like to offer you a full refund of your stay, plus complimentary accommodations for a week at any time in the next year. And if you're willing, I'd like to hear more about your experience so I can ensure we address the cultural problems that allowed this to happen. Patricia was quiet again. Why are you doing this? That was months ago. I never even filed a formal complaint. Because it was wrong, and because you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and we failed you. Ethan paused. And honestly, because I recently experienced something similar at my own property, and it opened my eyes to how deep these problems run. You experienced discrimination at your own resort? I did. I checked in without announcing who I was, dressed like an ordinary guest, and I was treated the same way you were. The only difference is I had the power to do something about it afterward. And you're doing this for everyone who is treated that way? Everyone we can identify, yes. Patricia let out a long breath. That's actually remarkable. Most companies would just bury it and hope no one noticed. I noticed, and I can't bury it, not and still look at myself in the mirror. They talked for another 20 minutes. Patricia shared details Ethan hadn't been able to see in the footage. The whispered comments from staff who didn't realize she could hear, the way other guests had stared, the crushing embarrassment of being made to feel she didn't belong. By the end, her voice had softened. Mr. Brooks, I appreciate this call more than you know. It doesn't erase what happened, but it helps. It really does. I'm glad, and I meant what I said about the complimentary stay. If you decide to give us another chance, I promise you'll be treated the way you should have been treated the first time. I might take you up on that, but even if I don't, thank you for calling. Thank you for caring enough to make it right. After she hung up, Ethan sat for a moment, feeling the weight of that conversation settle into his bones. 7 more calls to make. 7 more apologies. 7 more opportunities to either restore faith or confirm that some damage couldn't be undone. He made the calls throughout the day, between morning time with Jamie and an afternoon meeting with the new training consultants. Each conversation was different. Some people were angry, others were surprised, a few were skeptical of his motives. But all of them appreciated being acknowledged. All of them seemed to carry a little less hurt by the end of the call. The last call was to the man Marcus had mentioned, Mr. James Wilson, who'd been turned away entirely. Finding his contact information had been harder since he'd never actually checked in, but Jonathan's team had located the failed reservation in their archives and tracked down a phone number. Mr. Wilson answered with a gruff, "Yes?" "Mr. Wilson, my name is Ethan Brooks. I'm calling about an incident at the Grand Oceanic Resort approximately 7 months ago." "I don't know what you're selling, but I'm not buying." "I'm not selling anything, sir. I'm calling to apologize. You had a reservation with us, and you were turned away at check-in. I've since learned this was because of discriminatory treatment by our staff, and I wanted to personally apologize and offer compensation." There was a sharp intake of breath. "How do you know about that?" "An employee came forward and told me what happened. I've been reviewing our practices and reaching out to guests who were treated unacceptably." "Unacceptably?" Mr. Wilson's voice was hard. "That's a polite word for it. I drove 4 hours for that reservation. I'd saved up for months to take my wife somewhere nice for our anniversary, and they made me stand in that lobby for over an hour, questioning everything about my reservation, acting like I'd forged the confirmation email." Ethan closed his eyes. "I'm so sorry." "Then they told me the room wasn't available after all, just like that. No apology, no explanation that made sense. My wife cried in the car on the way home." His voice cracked slightly. "Do you know how that feels? To see your wife cry because you couldn't even get her a hotel room for your anniversary? I can't imagine how painful that must have been." "No, you probably can't." Mr. Wilson was quiet for a moment. "Why are you calling me now? Why do you care?" "Because I experienced something similar at my own property. Not as severe as what you went through, but enough to show me we had serious problems. And because learning about what happened to you and to others made me realize that what I experienced wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. The person who did this, are they still working there? No, she was terminated. Good. She should be. Mr. Wilson, I'd like to offer you a full week's stay at the resort, complimentary at any time that works for you. Private suite, all amenities included. I can't undo what happened on your anniversary, but I can give you and your wife the experience you should have had. Mr. Wilson didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer. My wife passed away 4 months ago. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. I'm so sorry. Cancer. We knew it was coming, but that doesn't make it easier. Mr. Wilson cleared his throat. That anniversary trip would have been our last one together. We didn't know it at the time, but it would have been. Instead, we spent it driving home in silence. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Mr. Wilson, I don't know what to say. I'm so deeply sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry we robbed you of that time together. You didn't rob us of the time. We still had those months. But you robbed us of the memory we could have made. The one good thing we could have had before everything fell apart. I know, and I can't fix that. But if there's anything I can do, anything at all, please tell me. Mr. Wilson was quiet for a long time. There's a charity my wife supported, a hospice care organization. If you really want to make amends, make a donation in her name, Dorothy Wilson. That would mean something. Consider it done, and Mr. Wilson, I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that we're implementing comprehensive training and oversight to ensure this never happens to anyone else. Your experience, and your wife's, won't be forgotten. See that it isn't. After the call ended, Ethan sat in the silent office, staring at his notes. 8 conversations. 8 people whose lives had been touched by the casual cruelty of a system he'd built but failed to maintain with integrity. Patricia Morrison would probably come back, give them another chance. Mr. Wilson never would, and Ethan didn't blame him. He called Jonathan immediately. I need you to make a donation to a hospice charity, $25,000, in the name of Dorothy Wilson. Jonathan didn't question it. I'll handle it this afternoon. And Jonathan, I want a memorial plaque in the lobby. Something subtle, but permanent. Dedicated to treating every guest with dignity and respect. No names, no explanations. Just a reminder of what we stand for. I'll have designs on your desk by tomorrow. That evening, Ethan took Jamie and Lauren to the resort's casual Italian restaurant. Jamie ordered spaghetti and spent most of dinner explaining the plot of a book he was reading about dragons. Lauren watched Ethan carefully, clearly sensing the weight he was carrying, but not pushing him to talk. After Jamie excused himself to look at the dessert display case, Lauren leaned forward. You okay? I talked to 8 people today who were discriminated against at this resort. The last one was a man whose wife died before they could have the anniversary trip we denied them. Lauren reached across the table and gripped his hand. Ethan, I keep thinking about all the things I could have done differently, all the systems I should have had in place, all the attention I should have been paying. You can't rewrite the past. I know, but I can make sure the future is different. I have to. And you will. You already are. Lauren squeezed his hand. But you also have to forgive yourself at some point. Beating yourself up forever doesn't help anyone. Jamie returned, bouncing with excitement about the chocolate cake he wanted to try. They ordered dessert, and Ethan watched his son talk and laugh, and felt the familiar pull between the man he needed to be for his business and the father he wanted to be for his son. The next morning, Ethan met with his full management team, not just Jonathan, but the heads of every department: housekeeping, food and beverage, maintenance, spa services, activities coordination. 15 people gathered in the conference room, all of them nervous about what this meeting would bring. Ethan didn't waste time with pleasantries. Over the past week, I've identified systematic failures in how we treat guests at this resort. Some of you were aware of these failures. Some of you participated in them. Some of you genuinely didn't know they were happening. Regardless of which category you fall into, things are changing. Today. He outlined the new policies: mandatory bias training for all staff with refresher courses quarterly, mystery shoppers who would test the system regularly, anonymous reporting channels that bypassed direct management, monthly reviews of all guest complaints, no matter how minor, performance metrics that weighted respectful treatment equally with revenue generation. And one more thing, Ethan said, looking around the room. Every manager in this company, including me, will spend one shift per quarter working a frontline position. Front desk, housekeeping, food service, doesn't matter. You'll experience what our staff experiences, and you'll see what our guests see. No exceptions. A woman from housekeeping raised her hand tentatively. Even you, Mr. Brooks? Especially me. That's how I discovered these problems in the first place, by experiencing my own resort as a regular person. I should have been doing that all along. The meeting lasted 2 hours. There were questions, concerns, pushback from a few managers who thought the changes were too extreme or too expensive. Ethan listened to all of it, adjusted where it made sense, but held firm on the core principles. As people filed out, Jonathan lingered. That was good, firm but fair. I hope it's enough. It's a start, and sometimes a start is all you can ask for. Jonathan pulled out his tablet. The memorial plaque designs came in. Want to see them? They reviewed the options together. Ethan chose a simple bronze plaque with the resort's logo and a single line. Excellence begins with dignity. Install it next to the front desk, Ethan said, where every guest and every employee will see it. Done. That afternoon, while Jamie napped and Lauren read by the pool, Ethan returned to his suite to pack. Their week was nearly over. Tomorrow they'd drive back to their regular lives, Jamie to school, Ethan to the other properties he owned, Lauren to her job and her own routines. But Ethan knew he'd be coming back, not as an owner checking on investments, but as someone committed to maintaining what he'd started to rebuild. His phone rang, an unknown number but local. Hello? Mr. Brooks? A woman's voice, shaking slightly. This is Claire Whitman. Please don't hang up. Ethan's jaw tightened. Ms. Whitman, our lawyers have finalized the settlement. There's nothing left to discuss. I know. I'm not calling about that. I needed to say something. Then say it. I've spent the last week thinking about what I did. Really thinking about it, not just making excuses, and I realized something. She took a shaky breath. You were right. About all of it. I did judge you based on your appearance. I did treat you as less than. And I did strike you when you were simply asking for basic respect. Ethan walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. Why are you telling me this? Because my daughter asked me why I lost my job. And I couldn't lie to her. So I told her the truth. That I was mean to someone because I thought they weren't important. And it turned out they were the most important person in the building. Claire's voice cracked. She looked at me like she didn't know who I was. And Mr. Brooks, I didn't know either. Claire, let me finish, please. She waited for his agreement before continuing. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that what happened, it changed me. I've been volunteering at a homeless shelter. I've been going to therapy. I've been trying to understand how I became someone who could do what I did. That's good. I'm glad you're doing that work. I hurt people, not just you. There were others, and I didn't even see them as people. I saw them as problems to manage, annoyances to dismiss. And I'm going to spend a very long time making amends for that. Ethan was quiet, processing this. What do you want from me, Claire? Nothing. Truly. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. Not because I got caught, or because I lost my job, but because I was wrong. About you. About those other guests. About what it means to serve people. Apology noted. Thank you for listening. And Mr. Brooks, what you're doing at the resort, the changes you're making, that's what I should have been doing all along. I hope they work. I hope you build something better than what I helped create. The line went dead. Ethan stood there for a long moment, phone still in hand, unsure what to feel. Anger at the lost time and hurt caused? Relief that Claire seemed to be genuinely facing what she'd done? Skepticism that the change would last? Maybe all of it. Maybe none of it mattered as much as what came next. He called Jonathan one more time. The settlement with Claire. Add one more condition. What kind of condition? I want her to write a letter to each of the 8 guests we identified. Not apologizing on behalf of the resort, that's on me, but apologizing for her personal actions. And I want her to volunteer at least 100 hours at a nonprofit serving marginalized communities. That's unusual, and her lawyer might push back. Tell them it's non-negotiable. Either she agrees or we reopen discussions about criminal charges for assault. Understood. I'll make it happen. On their last evening at the resort, Ethan took Jamie to the beach one final time. The sun was setting, turning the sky into a masterpiece of orange and purple and deep blue. They walked along the shore, Jamie collecting shells and asking questions about waves and tides and why the ocean was salty. Dad, can we come back here? Would you want to? Yeah, it's the best place ever, and I want to show my sandcastle skills to the other kids again. Ethan smiled. Then we'll come back, I promise. And maybe next time we can go on a boat? I saw people on boats and it looked really fun. We can definitely do that. Jamie stopped and looked up at him seriously. Dad, are you happy? The question caught Ethan off guard. What makes you ask that? You smile more here than at home. I want you to smile at home too. Ethan knelt down to Jamie's level. Buddy, being here with you makes me very happy. And you're right, I should smile more at home. I'm going to work on that. Good. Because you have a nice smile. Thank you. You have a pretty great smile yourself. They walked back as the last light faded from the sky, Jamie chattering about school and friends, and a project he wanted to do about ocean animals. Normal kid stuff. The kind of conversation that reminded Ethan what actually mattered in life. Back at the resort, he found Lauren in the lobby, standing in front of the spot where the memorial plaque would be installed tomorrow. She turned as he approached. Jamie told me about the plaque. Excellence begins with dignity. You think it's too simple? I think it's perfect. Simple enough to remember, profound enough to matter. She linked her arm through his. You did good here, Ethan. You saw something broken, and you fixed it. I started to fix it. There's a long way to go. There always is, but you started. That counts for something. They stood together in the lobby, the same lobby where, just a week ago, Ethan had been humiliated and dismissed. Now it looked different to him. Not because the marble was any less polished or the chandelier any less grand, but because he understood what lay beneath the surface. The people who made it run, the systems that shaped their behavior, the culture that could either elevate or diminish everyone who passed through. He'd built this place to create beautiful memories for families. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of that purpose, but he'd found it again, even if the path there had been painful. That night, after Jamie was asleep and Lauren had retired to her room, Ethan sat on his balcony with a glass of wine and Jamie's drawing from that first night. 2 stick figures on a beach, holding hands beneath a crayon sun. His phone buzzed with an email from Jonathan. The subject line read, "First training session complete." Ethan opened it. The email contained feedback from the 23 employees who'd gone through the pilot version of the new bias training. Most of it was positive. A few comments were skeptical. One stood out. This made me think about guests differently. I never realized I was making assumptions. I want to do better. It wasn't much. One person's recognition in a staff of over 100, but it was something. Ethan replied to Jonathan, "Move forward with full rollout and send me the schedule for mystery shopper visits. I want to be personally involved in reviewing the results." He set his phone aside and looked out at the ocean, barely visible in the darkness except where moonlight caught the waves. Tomorrow they'd leave. In a week, he'd be back at his main office, dealing with other properties, other problems, other responsibilities. But he'd return here, regularly, not as an absent owner collecting revenue reports, but as someone committed to ensuring the place lived up to its promise. The ocean whispered against the sand, constant and indifferent, the same sound it had made when this beach was empty, when the resort was just an idea, when Ethan was just a man with a dream of creating something beautiful. That dream hadn't died. It had just needed to remember what made beauty real. Not marble floors or crystal chandeliers or 5-star ratings, but the simple, radical act of treating every person who walked through the door as if they mattered, as if their story was worth hearing, as if their dignity was worth protecting. Excellence begins with dignity. Ethan lifted his glass in a silent toast to the ocean, to the resort, to the people he'd hurt, and the people he'd helped, to his son sleeping peacefully 2 rooms away. Then he went inside, pulled out his laptop, and began drafting the next phase of reforms. Because fixing something wasn't a single dramatic gesture. It was 1,000 small decisions, made consistently, over time, when no one was watching and when everyone was. It was choosing, day after day, to be the person you wanted your son to believe you were. The person who used power not to dominate but to protect. The person who saw mistakes not as threats to deny, but as opportunities to grow. The person who understood that the measure of a man wasn't what he built, but how he treated the people who lived and worked in what he'd built. Ethan typed until his eyes grew heavy, until the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. By the time he finally closed his laptop and fell into bed, he'd outlined 6 months of initiatives, follow-up programs, accountability measures. It wouldn't be perfect. Some people would resist. Some changes would fail. Some problems he hadn't even identified yet would emerge. But he'd be there, present, engaged, accountable. And that, finally, felt like enough. When he woke a few hours later, Jamie was already up, standing by the window in his pajamas, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold. "Dad, wake up! We gotta go build one more sandcastle before we leave!" Ethan smiled, exhaustion and purpose mixing into something that felt like peace. "Give me 5 minutes to get ready." "Okay, but hurry, the sun's already up." They built that sandcastle together, knowing the tide would claim it by evening. But that was okay. Some things weren't meant to last forever in their original form. They were meant to teach you something, to change you, and then to let you build something better in their place. As they worked, other families arrived on the beach. Jamie waved at kids he'd met earlier in the week. Parents nodded to Ethan in the universal acknowledgement of fellow travelers through the complicated journey of parenthood. And standing at the resort entrance, barely visible from the beach, Jonathan supervised the installation of a bronze plaque that would remind everyone who entered what they were really building here. Not just a luxury resort, but a place where excellence began with something far more valuable than profit or prestige. It began with dignity, and it began now.